Hi, I'm your host, Alexa Juvan, and welcome to Longing Mind, a podcast encouraging you to explore your curiosity for yourself, others, and the world around you. In each episode, I'll dive deeper into something that's been on my mind. Eventually, I hope to invite some special guests to see what's on theirs too. Be sure to follow on Spotify to catch new episodes, and feel free to send me feedback on Instagram at Longing Mind. All right, let's get into it. Welcome to episode 1. In today's episode, I want to chat a little bit more about the intentions behind this podcast and then get right into my first topic, which is showing up for yourself. This is something that can be really hard to tackle because it's so nuanced. There's so many layers to it. So today I want to break it down. For me, as someone who grew up trying to be everything to everyone other than someone for myself, I found that in many ways I ended up just abandoning myself and through my actions proving that I valued other people's opinions and other people's expectations more than I valued my own goals and my own dreams. And when the path that you're on is just so far from where you want to be, it creates this massive disconnect. And where you're at versus where you hope to be can just be so uncomfortable that it causes you to reassess. And for me, by getting uncomfortable, by acknowledging those gaps, and by learning how to show up for myself, I've become so much more comfortable with the idea of holding myself as someone of value and comfortable with the idea of the unknown. Okay, but you might be asking, why podcast? Why even bother yapping on the interwebs? And for me, this really goes back to the pandemic. So this is when I started listening to podcasts. I would take walks, and personally, I've never been an audiobook person, but I've always been a YouTube person. I like hearing people talk in long form, and I feel like podcasts were kind of an extension of that. They were a really cool way for me to process information. I would listen to podcasts about those like crime stories. I would listen to stuff you should know, ones that focused on mindset, language tips. Regardless of the topic, I felt like hearing information in that format from someone else felt really grounding and really conversational. So it kind of felt like someone was just next to you talking to you. And I really liked that. So I think there was this idea in my head that, hey, it would be really cool to do something similar, have any type of podcast. Did I have a clue of what to talk about? No, but podcast with a question mark was on my resolution list for at least 2 years now. So it's finally time to bite the bullet. The other thing is, unfortunately, I am not mysterious. I wish I was mysterious so bad, but unfortunately, I love to overshare and share my thoughts and my feelings and just yap. So I think podcasting is a great medium for me. And we'll see how it goes. The other reason why I held back from getting started was for a long time, and even a little bit now, I doubt if I have anything worth saying or worth sharing. Like what's the point? Everyone and their mother has a podcast nowadays, right? Or, what can you possibly say that's new and different? But I kept thinking about it, and I realized that if something's been on my mind for this long, I at least owe it to myself to see it through and just see what happens. Because at the very best, like best case scenario, I end up having some really engaging conversations with people. I can share my thoughts, my experiences, and hopefully make anyone listening feel maybe a little bit less alone, or maybe like, hey, I resonate with that. And at worst, maybe someone's like, I hate your podcast. You should never podcast again. And I'm like, bet, okay. But I would still win by having the experience of trying. So I guess I don't have that much to lose. And with all this being said, one takeaway from this podcast or for anything I do is to instill the idea that you should go wherever your longing takes you, right? It sounds so cheesy, but truly, I think everyone would benefit by using the sense of longing, the sense of yearning for something that they absolutely don't think that they could achieve as a guide to understand what are the things that you think about, where does your mind take you, and to accept how unique your thoughts and perspective are. Why let your dreams stay dreams? Just start the podcast, do what you want, especially if it's something that's been weighing on your mind for a long time. I feel like every single person is the culmination of a ton of unique experiences, right? Like no two people share the same life, and everyone has a story to tell. I think it's really important to have ownership over your own narrative. Everyone knows one version of you, but only you know the full you. I think you're not obligated to share every part of your story, right? But if you never do, then you almost never have a say in how you're perceived by others. So, from my perspective, at least, documenting, whether through writing or through this podcast or through conversations I have with others about my preferences, my goals, my dreams, my whatever, that all informs them a little bit better of how I feel. That tells them who I am from my eyes and what I think. One thing I have experienced firsthand is the fact that time isn't guaranteed. So if something's on your heart, if something's on your mind, just release it, set it in motion. I wanted to podcast. Here I am podcasting. We'll see how it goes, you know? And hopefully, by me sharing my trains of thought and my ideas and just yapping here, hopefully that helps inspire some curiosity in you, dear listener. Hopefully, it helps you connect more with yourself, your thoughts, and maybe with some other people in your life. In terms of podcast schedule, I am aiming to film and record a couple of these per month. I hope to get one out weekly. That's really aspirational at this point. I've never podcasted before. I'm also still working on writing and editing YouTube videos. So I'm trying to just sort out how to do everything. But once I sort this out, I'll get back to you. The goal is one per week, but we'll see. All right, with all the logistics out the way, let's get into our first topic for episode 1, which is showing up for yourself. Again, I think I've done a pretty bad job of this for most of my life because I've rarely prioritized the things that I want, said things that reflected how I really feel in a situation, or made choices that were in line with what I actually wanted. And I've really spent a lot of effort appeasing others, people pleasing, and trying to perform this curated version of a person I wasn't. So on paper, maybe at face value, things looked great, things looked okay. But in many ways for me, I felt like I wasn't being true to myself. And so I really had to take a step back to rewire my psyche, my brain, and figure out, okay, what is it that I want? How can I show up for myself? And this involved taking my wants seriously and going on the journey to actually value myself, which is freaking hard as someone who has just historically struggled with low self-esteem. So I want to take you on that journey with me. If you can relate, maybe listening to this will help you out too. All right, so before we can actually show up for ourselves, we should break down what it means. Like, what does it even mean to show up for yourself? And I would say that for me, showing up for myself means understanding how to balance my time, my energy for myself and for others. It means showing up for myself the way I would for like a best friend or someone I love. And that can look like taking better care of myself, whether nourishing my body, fueling it properly, making sure that my inner critic isn't being too harsh, setting better boundaries with other people, and setting up a greater sense of balance with how much I'm giving to others relative to myself based on the energy that I actually have. I think showing up for myself also means doing things that inspire me and pursuing my goals. And to show up for yourself really means to honor yourself. And it's hard to honor something that you don't value. So for me, a lot of the work had to start out with understanding, okay, why do I place others on this pedestal? Why do I feel like I can't let others down, but I'm so quick to accept that I can let myself down and continue to do so? So removing that sense of needing to justify showing up for yourself, removing the feeling that, oh, I'm not deserving of this balance, of this care is really critical. And for me, by changing my values over time, it's really changed a lot for the better. By gradually, incrementally showing up for myself in different ways, my confidence has boosted. I've become more happy, more satisfied overall with myself and my life. But it's definitely still a continuous journey. You're never quite done. It's a constant uphill battle because your needs always change, you change, and circumstances of life change, right? So it's this constant reevaluation process to sort out, okay, where am I at? What's going on? And what do I need right now? And so that brings me to my next point, which is, okay, obviously all of this is great, but why is it so hard to do? Like, why is it so hard to actually show up for yourself? For me, I think it mainly stems from the fact that to show up, you need to first understand yourself. And that step really stops a lot of people, myself included, right? And so when I say understand yourself, I'm talking about understanding, are we feeling really uncomfortable with one aspect of our life? And then breaking down, okay, where's this discomfort coming from? Like, what are my needs? What would make the situation better? And that can be really difficult when the ways that showing up for yourself are presented under the mask of quote unquote like self-care, because what we've been sold is this performance of self-care. And that's not to say that putting a face mask on and running a bath with a book and a glass of wine or eating a whole pizza in bed, then binging a season of TV aren't going to make you feel better. Maybe that is what you need, but that might not be the course of action to address your actual needs. And that can be exhausting when you realize, okay, I did everything for self care and I still feel like shit. So it's really important to break this down and understand that self care and showing up for yourself can look so different depending on the person. And because this is so personal, you need to just sit with yourself and understand, okay, what do I need? For me, I found this difficult because for so much of my life when I was younger, I feel like I had developed this sense of numbness almost. Like I knew what answers would perform well. I knew what would be the right answer in any situation. But when faced with a question about, like what do you want? What what's your preference? I would be so quick to say like, "Oh, I don't know, like whatever you want," or "Oh, this is the best because I know that this is the answer that will appease everyone in the room," right? But I had a really hard time pinpointing what I, Alexa, want in a situation. And over time as I was realizing this, I was like, "Wow, I feel like I have no sense of self." The more that I kind of push myself into a corner and put the needs of everyone else first, it's just this huge disservice to me as an entity. I think it's hard to show up because you need to sort out what's the narrative that you're telling yourself that is undermining you taking action to make a change. For me, I've always had that low sense of trust in myself or belief that I'm like interesting or valuable or that I can execute and make things happen. I always felt and sometimes still feel like, oh, I'm not great enough at anything. And so sometimes that holds me back and I'm thinking, okay, then don't even try. Like, what's the point of trying if you're not going to be incredible at this? But in order to undo that narrative and to undo the compounding of years of bad habits, of lacking that care for myself, it involves rewiring your whole relationship with yourself. And yeah, that's hard. There's no easy fix for that. It's a lot of doing the work and pulling through for yourself. Like, that's crazy. Damn, I wish there was an easier way. So, my question here is if you relate, is there a reason why you think it's hard to show up for yourself in the way that you'd hope? What's the blocker for you? Is it tied to your self perception? Is it tied to external factors? I'm not a professional. I'm just throwing questions out. These are all the things that I thought through as I sorted out, okay, what is holding me back? And of course, the answer is usually myself, but I had to understand that before I could become more inspired to change. With that said, you may be asking, okay, how did you actually pull yourself out from this sense of worthlessness and inability to function and inability to make decisions into someone who can start making changes? And to that, I think the Cheetah Girls said it best in the song Cinderella. You gotta rescue yourself. You can't wait on anyone. No one is coming to save you, unfortunately. No one else. You got to rescue yourself. So it always comes back to this idea of agency and the idea that, okay, if you're really deep in a pit or a rut, sometimes you need to understand, okay, no one's going to read your mind and pull you out. You have to take agency to either express how you're feeling to others, to share, to connect, or take a new course of action. So for me, I found that after I hit some like really low points or points of frustration where I felt like, okay, I've hit a block or I hit a wall, I needed these to really jolt me to reassess, like, okay, what's going on? Where's the gap? What can I do to make this better? Whether it's setting a better boundary or changing my perspective or taking actions and baby steps toward completing a big task that I'm looking forward to. So for me, I have three examples. One is time scarcity. In college and even after, I always struggled with overpacking my schedule, whether it was dance rehearsals and classes and social events, just saying yes to too many things. I felt like I was consistently being spread too thin. Instead of prioritizing my health by putting sleep and quality and everything to the side, I prioritized feeling productive by nature of being busy. Hashtag capitalism. We can get into that in another episode. But when I stepped back, I thought, okay, why am I glamorizing this stress, this suffering? Because it's not cute to show up to a rehearsal at 6 p.m. and be like, oh, I haven't eaten all day. Or like, oh, I'm running on like 3 hours of sleep. That's not a fun time, okay? But for some reason, this stress cycle can be weirdly glamorized. Like, oh, I'm doing so much. I'm doing amazing because I have so much going on. But no, it just means that I was a wreck. And so I only felt happy when I started saying no to things and I started reclaiming my time for myself. Because there was just a point where I felt I was giving so much of my time to other activities, other people, and I was just neglecting me. People will not be your friend anymore if you say no one time to something and you offer to reschedule or you give a good reason, you know? It's not to say no to everything. Just reassess before you say yes. How am I feeling? Is this feasible? Does it make sense to stack 3 different events in one day? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. And I only realized that once I hit the wall. I like burnt out severely. I just wanted to not dance for a semester either. I took a full break from being on any team. And honestly, it was an amazing time because once I realized that I have agency over my time, I felt unstoppable. I was like, wow, it's like a cheat code for life. The second example of an event that inspired change was me experiencing frustration around having not followed through for myself and for things that I wanted to do. What this looked like was as New Year's came, I would write a list of, resolutions or little goals that I thought I would complete in the following year. But in 2024 and 2025, I was looking at my lists and I realized a lot of these things were the same, which means I was not working on my goals through the year. I was just carrying them over like dead weight. This just created a huge sense of frustration in me. I was so upset with myself for not not acting towards the things that clearly I wanted because they were on my mind enough for me to add on these lists that I was like, okay, I've had enough. It's time to just start. And by working on writing publicly, starting my Substack, by actually creating my YouTube channel, by starting this podcast, I was making baby steps toward rebuilding trust with myself and changing the narrative that, okay, you can see things through. You can take little steps towards the things that you want to accomplish. You can execute. You will not falter after starting. You won't leave it in the pile of shame along with a bunch of other projects. No, you can actually do this. And that's been life-changing. We'll get into some other ways that I'm showing up for myself with action later, but I implore you, if there's something that's been on your personal wish lists or your like dream list for a while and you just haven't made any moves to get started, do something really, really tiny in that direction. All right, the third example of something that inspired change was my work situation. So about 2 years ago, I had been working remotely at my job for a long time. So at that point, it had been almost 4 years of remote work after a year in office. And remote work just generally took a huge toll on me. I feel like not being able to interact with coworkers in person really changed the experience. I really enjoyed my job, but over the years, the structure of the work itself changed. I just felt like I was building this dissonance with the work that I was doing. And as much as I appreciate it making me so adaptable, I just realized that this is not where I think I need to be right now. Compound that with the fact that I had some members of my family going through health issues. I feel like my mental health was hitting a low. And one day on a work call, one of my colleagues even commented that they noticed that the light had left my eyes. And that just really shook me because I was thinking, okay, wow, this person who I only have a working relationship with, I only see camera on my computer is telling me that they've noticed such a change in my overall well-being. So that really scared me. I was thinking, okay, I'm clearly carrying this energy into my life. It feels like everything needs to be reevaluated, reassessed. And I remembered that I can control the situation. It comes back to this idea of agency, right? I am in a place that I don't necessarily think is serving me right now. I think that I need time and space to process what's going on. And for me, what that looked like was deciding to put my notice in and quitting my job without another job lined up. But I think that was really necessary for me to, again, rebuild my sense of self, to trust in myself, and to honor the fact that I actually did plan this through. I had a plan, even though it seemed like to a lot of people, it seemed like there was no plan. I had planned things out roughly. And we could probably talk more about this in another episode. But by executing agency in all these situations to take control over my time, set better boundaries, follow through on my personal wish list, and allow me to reconnect with myself, I was able to learn that my time, my goals, myself, like all of these are worth honoring. But I had to be the one to acknowledge that and change my situation for the better. Those three examples nudged me and inspired me to make a change in my life. But I wanted to also discuss what I'm doing now to continue improving on this. Now, the main tactic of showing up for myself and executing has been getting out of my head. I am someone who lives so much in my mind. I mean, hashtag longing mind. That's the name of my Substack. That's the name of this podcast. I overthink, I ruminate, I daydream. I've always been like this. It's a curse. It's a blessing and a curse, to be honest. But I can really talk circles in my head before making any type of decision. I'm also the type of person who I don't need to listen to anything on a flight. I could just sleep and stare at the screen or stare at the window, close my eyes, and completely imagine scenarios and conversations and whatnot. So, yeah, my mind is a, a funny place to be. But I think it's so important to get out of our heads and to write things down or to drive accountability by speaking about your goals with a friend or someone that you can confide in to say, hey, I actually really want to do this. Can you help me keep me accountable? And by doing that, or even by listing something out on paper or putting it in a journal, typing it out, you kind of already begin making it real, right? Like once it's out of that intangible space between your ears, then it's something that you can kind of grasp and you can work towards. So by revisiting my bucket lists and thinking more about what I fixate on mentally, sharing with my friends and saying, oh, I want to do this. Can you check in with me at the end of the week to make sure I've done this? It's been really helpful for seeing things through. So some examples of this are writing. I had wanted to start up writing again. It was one of my favorite subjects in school when I was growing up, and I just neglected the practice of it. I have a couple posts talking about it on Substack. You can get into it there. My goal with writing was really to just build the habit of it, keep doing it for fun, and see if I enjoyed it. This May actually marks the 1 year anniversary of me starting my Substack, and I've been pretty consistent, which I'm really proud of. By setting incremental goals and just having fun with the process, I've worked on proving to myself that yes, you can build a habit. You can be successful at building a habit and you can put yourself out there and it's not so scary. It's completely fine. Look at how happy you are after doing it. It's so satisfying to look through my archive and read my old words. Even if literally no one else was reading it, I would be so happy for having created it. The other way I've shown up for myself is by DMing or dungeon mastering for Dungeons and Dragons. I've been lucky enough to play with friends in person since post-pandemic. Over the years, I was really inspired by the way that my friend Andre, shout out Andre, DMs because he's just so creative. He has exclusively homebrewed his games. And for those who are unaware, homebrewing just means that you are responsible for building the world, crafting the setting, the interactions, the NPCs, like the different characters that are involved without the help of baseline documentation. It's like world building from scratch, which is so cool. And he always made the world so fun and engaging that I always thought, okay, it would be so interesting to try to DM and see what it's like. So I, in the past year, gathered about 15 or more. I think at this point it's like 15 to 20 people who had mixed experience playing D&D. Some were complete beginners, had zero knowledge. Some had played before. And I brought them up to speed. I ran them through the basics, and I've run about 4 different one-shots, which are 3 to 4 hour sessions, over 10 sessions total. And if you had told this to me 4 years ago, like, hey, in the future, you're going to end up DMing and you're going to be running games and writing lore, past me would have been like, there's no fucking way, because that girl could barely read a character sheet. And look where we are now. But it took starting, and it made me so happy. The last way I've shown up for myself recently was starting a YouTube channel. This has been on my mental wish list for so long, because growing up, I've always been a YouTube girl. I never was into TV like that, but I always liked watching YouTube videos, vlogs, people describing their life, how they learn languages, how they travel, cooking videos, beauty videos, nails, like everything. I love long form YouTube content. And as an avid consumer of it, I was really inspired. And I always thought to myself, oh, it would be cool to have a channel one day. I just have no clue what it would be about. But I've, especially in the past couple of years, been lucky enough to travel pretty extensively. I bought a camera last year and recorded a good amount of footage while I was in Taiwan, as well as Japan, Australia, earlier this year. And I held on to so much of this footage without editing it for months and months and months. And I realized I already did half the work. What's holding me back from putting this together and posting, right? So I had to just get over myself, dip my toes in. And once I started, I got into the flow of things. I had a lot of fun editing. I really enjoy the editing process, and I'm sorting out how to make these videos a little bit better as I go. But it's just been really fun, and it's so gratifying to see the final product and have these videos to document really amazing memories and times in my life. So even looking at my channel makes me happy because it reminds me that I'm showing up for myself and doing something that little Alexa always dreamed of, which is literally just having a silly YouTube channel. So we're doing it. We're living the dream, clearly. Some other things that I'm currently working on to improve on is sharing how I'm doing with others, like how I'm really doing, not just like the, oh, I'm doing great. It's sharing the this dark and the sad feelings, and balancing that out. Another thing is working on changing my relationship with money and trying to alleviate a lot of anxiety I feel around it, even if I have no reason to be feeling as anxious as I think I do. So the way I'm moving through the world is not is not matching how I'm actually doing. But I think that could be another episode. And the last way I'm working on showing up for myself is by starting this podcast. I honestly had this episode vaguely scripted for at least 2 weeks. And I put off recording this first episode for so long. I told another friend at the beginning of this month, hey, I really want to put out 3 episodes in May. And I know it's already May 18th, but I might still try to record 3 episodes worth, but we'll see. So yeah, if anything, it just shows you that showing up, even if imperfectly, can make a difference. And it doesn't have to be so many things going on. And absolutely all of these things did not happen at the same time. I prolonged doing a lot for a really long time before getting started. And there's absolutely no reason to do so. But again, agency, you're the only one who can really change your situation and make things better. So before getting into our conclusions, I wanted to pose a question. What's one thing that you keep thinking about but never make time for? Is there a way to work on it this week? Take a second, dear listener, and consider. Is there a way to make time to work towards that goal you have, that idea you have? And don't judge yourself for it. Don't say like, oh, this is a silly idea. No, if it's been on your mind and on your heart for a while, just see it through. Like, trust me, it's going to make you so much happier. And even if no one understands it but you, it'll be worth it. All right, to conclude this episode, showing up for yourself is really hard, but it's worthwhile. It's going to take you time, But by taking tiny steps, incremental steps, you can work to build your confidence, better habits, and really let that motivation compound so you can keep showing up. Life is too short to move out of fear or to just not make moves that have the slightest chance of making you happier for even trying. And in most cases, if not all cases, you will be better for trying. So start small. Get a tiny win in this week. I want you to win. And for me, my win will be posting this episode after holding off on recording it for 2 weeks. So I know that I'm going to be up. I hope you're up with me. Thank you so much for listening to Longing Mind. If you like this episode, please follow and maybe even share it with someone you know. I'll catch you in the next one.